Welcome to the Week in Review with Brandon Hanson, managing editor of the CHEWELAH Independent, and Scott Schlaufman of Northern Lights Public Radio. Brandon and myself today will review the week's national, regional, and local headlines with a uniquely Stevens County point of view. Starting off this week's show, we have an opening story, a sad story. A serious four-vehicle crash on State Route 395 near CHEWELAH shut down the highway in both directions. This happened Wednesday, shortly before 6:30 in the evening, 6 miles north of CHEWELAH at the Blue Creek intersection. One person was transported from the scene with serious injuries. Also, a detour was established, and the road was reopened around 9:30 that evening. Caused quite the backups.
Yeah, this is kind of becoming common. We had the backup here south of town just a few weeks ago, or about a month ago, involving two rigs, and both people had to be life flighted out. So it's just a dangerous highway, and these wrecks continue to be common. I will say that it just seems like the more traffic you get on this highway, and I don't think it's exactly designed to take on this much traffic, what we're seeing now.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing more of these accidents, and people not doing the right thing also probably affects things there.
You know, years ago we'd have rumors of it becoming 4 lanes all the way to Canada, and that's just died out. You don't even hear talk about it anymore.
Yeah, I think there needs to be more population up there for that to happen, but I just that costs a lot of money. Kind of like what people are saying around Deer Park, put a interchange up there instead of a roundabout, but what they don't realize is that costs a lot of money. Putting in 4 lanes would probably, up to Canada, would cost a lot of money.
Astronomical, and with today's cost of construction, I think that gets even harder and harder. We're probably talking right around 2000 when I worked at KCHW, they were doing that first series of work coming out of Spokane and built that bridge. Not this recent one with all the homes on the hill and the bypass and everything. But the first time when they built that bridge and made it 4 lanes, I had done a thing on the radio because they only did 2 miles of highway. And if you remember, they built this massive cement plant out there on the top of the hill before you drop in. But they built 2 miles of highway. But 2 lanes each direction. So let's give them 4 miles of highway. And granted, that was a big bridge. And it took them 3 years to finish that project. So I started trying to do some math. And it was like $700 million for that project. So if that same construction crew would have built a highway all the way to Canada, we were looking at a number we don't even have an amount of money for, right, and about 160 years to complete it.
Yeah.
So when you got these gravy construction jobs, which that one had to be in my mind.
Right.
It took so long, and they built this plant out there, and they had 28 earth movers, but 3 of them only ever moved at a time, and it became ridiculous in this huge thing of money. So how do you build a 4-lane freeway to Canada?
Right. Yeah, how does it
in
happen?
today's age, it's got to be almost impossible.
And that's just one of the things we're having to deal with as we get more population, as we grow. We have to deal with the infrastructure we have, and right now a 2-lane highway is starting to get a little bit tough around here.
It is. It is. They're going to have to do something. All right. More growth is even slated.
Yeah, that's the thing. About 740,000 people live in the greater Spokane, Coeur d'Alene metro area. Now, I looked this up online. Stevens County is included. We are part of this metro area. And that figure could grow by 15,000 next year if the projected growth pans out. They kind of factor this with moves, not births, are fueling most of the population gains. The surge of new residents mean more traffic. Hooray. More construction and more conversion of open space in urban areas. So those, you hear it a lot, like, in North Spokane, it was like, I could ride my horse through here, or this was just nothing. And now it's, it's the Meade School District.
Well, just look at the growth between Spokane and Coeur d'Alene. It looks like it's one city almost until you hit the rest area.
Yeah,
Spokane just blends right into Post Falls. You got a short little break, and then here comes Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah, exactly. And job growth and affordable housing will continue to attract newcomers to the region. This is according to the Greater Spokane Incorporated's annual economic forecast. The big deal is Spokane County's cost of living is 14% below the Seattle areas and 5% below the national average, so it's cheaper to live here. Spokane County's median house prices have risen to $235,000, but if you compare that to other big cities along the coast, that's really cheap. So
yeah, if you've got $1 million home, let's say in California,
right,
which would be a very cheap rundown home,
right,
and you could sell it for cash, you've got $1 million in your pocket. You can come to Spokane, buy yourself a $400,000 beautiful home and a business, and off you go.
Yeah, and off you go there. And they expect strong job growth will continue through the first half of 2019, but could slow down the second half of the year if trade disputes with China escalate. If Amazon hires 1,500 workers next year to staff its West Plains fulfillment center as planned, the region should still continue to see strong job growth. That was kind of a big deal to see that fulfillment plant go in, and that should add a lot of jobs. I think that's also a big deal around here because people could do that whole commute thing, which is
sure.
tough, but a lot of people do it. So
I'm still crossing my fingers for the drones.
Right, exactly. So, like we were just talking, the growth of people affecting, travel on Highway 395, it's only going to get worse. More people are going to move in here. The Suncrest area, the kind of southern fringes of Stevens County are really cropping up there.
All right. Well, a story we've been keeping up on, I guess, for probably the past 3-4 weeks. We've covered it several times. WDFW announced lethal removal for 2 more wolf packs. The wolves from 2 packs that have been preying on cattle in the northeastern corner of the state will be killed. This is according to the State Department of Fish and Wildlife. They posted this Wednesday morning. Hunters will kill members of the Smackout pack in Stevens County and members of the Togo pack in Ferry County. Wolves from the 2 packs have been continuing to prey on cattle despite efforts to get them to stop. Agency Director Kelly Suswind said the WDF staff have confirmed that on 5 separate occasions since August 20th, 1 or more members of the Smackout pack injured 1 calf and killed 4 heifers on private pastures. Last month, the state decided to kill the remaining 2 wolves from the Old Profanity Peak Territory pack, which was repeatedly preying on cattle in Ferry County. Center for Biological Diversity and other conservation groups have criticized the killing of the wolves to save cattle grazing on public lands. That's kind of the tough spot of this.
Well, but the difference is this is actually these last depredations were on private land, not public land.
Okay.
There.
Wolves were killed off in Washington state early in the past century, but they began moving back into the state early in this century from Idaho and Canada. That's created intense conflicts with ranchers in the mountainous and sparsely populated northeastern plains of our state.
And that's one thing people kind of think the Fish and Wildlife introduced the wolves in here. But that's not true.
I was under that impression for some reason.
They migrated here, but you could say, well, they introduced them back into Yellowstone and some of the states, and they've grown out. But that's 3 states away, so you can't put the blame on Fish and Wildlife. You can put it on somebody else reintroducing it, but certainly not Fish and Wildlife there.
Okay.
But this is going to make this story interesting because now we have 3 wolf packs that the Fish and Wildlife is going to lethally remove wolves from there. Which I imagine is something that will upset a lot of conservation groups. It's one thing if it's just 1 pack or something like that, but now we have 3 packs. In fact, the Fish and Wildlife has just, for the lethal removal of one of the packs, they've just issued permits to the cattle producers because they're like, we don't have the resources to go after that many wolves at once.
Wow.
So it's getting interesting right now. This is stuff I haven't seen them go after 3 wolf packs in one time, I guess, there.
I wonder if this will sprout some more injunctions from conservation groups.
Well, if we haven't heard anything right now, and we're recording this on Thursday, but it could pop up. Since they announced it on Wednesday, the injunctions would have to be announced within a day, basically.
Oh, wow.
They have a day to announce it. Then Fish and Wildlife can just carry it out there.
So it's going to happen, looks like.
Yeah, it's going to happen there.
All right, playoffs for CHEWELAH.
Yep, this is the big one. On last Sunday afternoon, the CHEWELAH Cougars the football team learned where they'll be going for the first round of the State 2B playoffs. The answer? Oh, not very far.
Okay.
The Cougars will be hosting a home state playoff game on Friday at Snyder Field, taking on number 12 seed Columbia Burbank with kickoff at 7 p.m.
No way. They got a home game.
They got a home game, yeah.
Wow. Cool.
The Cougars are fresh off their 35-0 victory over Colfax in the crossover round of the playoffs and was ranked number 10 in the Associated Prep High School Football Poll in the final poll of the year with the state media. In the Max Preps computer rankings, CHEWELAH is ranked number 7 in the state for the 2B classification. This is because, they won 6 straight football games, had a 4-0 record in the NE2B North Division to win the league title.
Wow. I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah. CHEWELAH Cougars.
Woo-hoo.
They have scored 330 points on the year while giving up just 144. That defense for the Cougars has really come into their own in the second half of the season, and they're a pretty tough nut to crack there. So just 55 of the points that the Cougars have given up this year were scored by 2B teams. They played Omak and Colville, which are a classification up, and that's where the bulk of the points given up were actually given there.
Those tougher schools.
Tougher schools. Colville's in the state playoffs too. So, but Columbia Burbank, they had themselves a year. They're 8-2 on the year, and they're a pretty good squad. Good offense. They've scored 368 points on the year and just given up 137. They've won 4 games in a row and defeated Orville in the crossover round with a score of 63-15.
Wow.
So, it'll be interesting. CHEWELAH with the 5 seed is playing Burbank, which has a number 16th computer ranking from Max Preps there.
Okay.
Now, if CHEWELAH wins, they'll play the winner of the number 13 Brewster versus number 4 Napavine matchup. That's important because you would assume Napavine would win, and my guess is CHEWELAH would then travel over to the west side of the state and probably play in the Centralia area against Napavine.
So you think this is a tough game for the Cougars Friday night? Any predictions?
Yeah, every state playoff game is tough because a lot of these teams don't play each other during the year, so you really can't predict anything. You can't be like, well, look how they beat this team, and you can't really factor that because they don't have many like opponents anymore. So we're coming in with basically no knowledge of what's going to happen there. So I will say the Cougars get better every game. I expected the Colfax game to be tough for the Cougars, and they ended up winning 35-0. So
wow.
They're surprising to be sure there. And I don't know what Columbia Burbank will bring to the table. It's hard. It's 2B football, so I don't get the Sports Center highlights of Columbia Burbank during the year. So
what's going to be? I was amazed last week on Friday the amount of people that came from Colfax. Yeah, it was huge. It was huge. So expect that. Expect the crowds Friday night here in CHEWELAH again. Lots of people from out of town, right?
Yeah, people kind of wondered where Columbia Burbank was. It's actually kind of in between the Tri-Cities and Walla Walla. So they're just coming up from the southern part of the state. This is a little bit nicer to have somebody from the east side of the state play us as opposed to the west side, because that could have meant like a Saturday game or something like that, because they would have had to do that travel, and that's kind of tough to do.
Sure. All right. Well, good deal for CHEWELAH home game.
Yes, definitely. Here we go.
All right.
And that's, Friday, which is when this show is playing at 7 p.m. So head out to Snyder Field there.
All right. And that's our show for this week. It's a short one. I'm Scott.
I'm Brandon.
This has been the Week in Review with Brandon Hanson, managing editor of the CHEWELAH Independent, and Scott Schloffman of Northern Lights Public Radio. Each week, Brandon and myself review regional, local, and national stories with a uniquely Stevens County point of view.